my name is Randall Eggert, and this is for the class, Bad Words and Taboo Terms. This presentation is on grammar, and I call it Grammar, 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 and it'll become clear shortly why the three grammars. But before I get into the details, I want to talk a little bit about how people react when I say that I'm going to be talking about grammar. For a lot of people, the reaction to the word grammar is just this response, right? Not me. Me, I get happy. So when I know that we're going to be talking about grammar, I get really happy. And I'm not unusual for a linguist. In fact, I would say all linguists get really happy when they start talking about grammar. So the question is, why does the majority of the population have that response, whereas linguists have that really happy response? Well, you might say, well, linguists are just weird, and I'm not saying we're not, but that's not the reason for the difference in reactions. That, in fact, I would say that most people, when they think about grammar, they don't really think about it in the same way that linguists do. That for us, grammar is not what you were taught in, say, elementary school or middle school or high school even, where you were taught that you had to just simply memorize certain rules. And you were told that if you didn't follow those rules, you were doing it wrong. You were doing it incorrectly, improperly, right? And your teacher then would mark up all over your paper in red ink, and they would say, you stranded a preposition, you stranded a preposition here, you split an infinitive there, you didn't use whom where you should have. Well, that's not all that interesting, right? That's just somebody prescribing how you should talk. They're telling you what's right and what's wrong, what's correct, what's incorrect. It's some authority saying this is the way that language is done. Well, in fact, when linguists talk about grammar, we're thinking of it mostly in terms of mental grammar. And so there's three different ways that we look at it. There's mental grammar, there's descriptive grammar, and there's prescriptive grammar. It's the last one that most people are thinking of, and it's the least interesting one. So let me talk about them in a different order. I'll start with prescriptive grammar because that's the one that most people think about. Prescriptive grammar, these are the rules for how to properly use a language. These are rules like don't end a sentence with a preposition. Don't split an infinitive. Use whom when it's the object of a verb or the object of a preposition. Use which with non-restrictive relative clauses and that with restrictive relative clauses, right? These are kind of esoteric rules for how to correctly use language. And these are imposed by some authority who supposedly knows better than the rest of us. But as a linguist, that's not very interesting because it doesn't tell us much about what it means to be human. And that's why linguists go into the study. And that's why I say lots of scholars go into the studies that they do, is to better understand what it means to be human, to understand the human mind. But the human mind is not something that we can just pry open the skull and look inside there and say, yep, that's how that works. There's where language is. Yep, okay, I can see how we create this the sentences. Yeah, we combine the noun here and the verb here. And no, we can't just look into the mind and see how it works. We need a window. We need a window into the mind. And language is a great window for getting into the human mind because language is unique to humans. No other species has the ability to communicate with the complexity and sophistication that humans do. But again, we can't just peer into the mind and find how language is working. So we all know that we've got this mental grammar up there that allows us to use language, that allows us to create a sentence, that allows us to put it together and to actually pronounce it, and then for somebody else to hear it and process it and understand what it means. All of that's happening at a subconscious level. And I assume that you speak English since you're watching this video, and in that case, you have a mental grammar for English. But you're not thinking about all of those different elements as you're listening to this. And as I'm talking, I'm not thinking about how I'm putting together these sentences. It just happens unconsciously. We know that the mental grammar is there because we can do it, because we've got the ability. So the question is, how does it work? And that's where linguists come in. We try to model that mental grammar, and that's where descriptive grammar it comes into the picture. We use descriptive grammar, we use a model to try to understand what's happening in the human mind. And all of this brings us to the subject of this class, which is, of course, taboo words and swearing. Well, prescriptively, you were probably told by your parents or by teachers or by other authority figures, don't do it. Don't swear. Don't use Jesus as an exclamation. Don't say the F word. Don't say the C word. Don't say the B word, right? We're told don't. They are prescribing how we should or should not speak. But, of course, we know that people do swear. They do use these taboo words. So descriptively, they're doing it. And to understand humans, we've got to understand why. We've got to look at the whole language, not just a part of the language, and swearing is a part of the language. And so we can't ignore it. So it's far better, if we want to understand humans, is to understand how swearing works. How do these words fit into sentences? How are they used to communicate? And what we're going to find as we dig into it, we're going to see in future presentations that there's actually some kind of unique grammar to certain swear words that makes them really interesting as part of the language. So we're going to be looking in some subsequent presentations. We've got 3 more presentations just on this idea of grammar, and I'll look at each one of these types of grammar in more detail. But right now I just want to get those terminology out there of what is prescriptive grammar, what is mental grammar, and what is descriptive grammar. And of course, the last 2 are the most interesting. Mental grammar, it allows us to see into the human mind, and we get there by creating a model, that is, by creating a descriptive